This is Red Alert with the special segment, The Face Off. Tonight, we have Ricky Hatch, Tina Cannon, State Auditor. You choose. Tina, Ricky, I want both of you to take a look at each other for the next minute. Amazing.
That was fun.
That was fun. So, best of luck.
Thank you.
This is an open forum. Give us your answers, and may the best person win. I think we all win in this situation. I'm excited. Okay? This question will, and I don't know if you guys want to flip a coin to see who starts first. If not, we can start here, and we can have Tina second.
That's fine.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's
okay.
fine.
Okay. Ricky, what makes you the best auditor out of the both of you? What makes you the best auditor on the ballot?
Thank you, Joy, for having this and for the question. It's great to get this information out. I really think it comes down to two things. And the nice thing is you've got two good choices here. You have a good, better, best kind of option. I think what I bring to this falls in the category of two areas: experience and relationships. I have been an auditor for over 3 decades. I have been a CPA for 26 years. I have worked in the private sector and the public sector. I'm currently the county auditor up in Weber County, and I've been doing that for 13 years. So they say it takes about 10,000 hours to be an expert in something. If I do my calculations correctly, I'm getting close to about 60,000 hours in the field of accounting and auditing. I've worked on both coasts as an auditor and an accountant. I've worked overseas, and then again up in Weber County for 13 years on the auditing side. So when it comes down to experience and qualifications, I'm the only CPA in the race. I'm the only person in the race who has conducted public audits, public accounting audits that are certified by a CPA, and I've been doing that for a long time. I live, eat, and breathe auditing, and I still like it after 3 decades.
Thank you for your answer. Tina, your response?
Thank you for having us today. I appreciate that we've been able to get together and have these conversations. So what makes me the best auditor in this race? I think it goes back to what the role of the state auditor is. We're the watchdog for the taxpayer. And I've spent 30 years representing taxpayers in Utah. I know who pays this tax that we have oversight over. And I think it's incredibly important that we remember who we represent. That's why from the very beginning, I chose to keep the independence of the state auditor as a primary point of my campaign. I didn't solicit or accept endorsements or donations from anyone that we have the responsibility of oversight over, and that includes state and county and city level and university levels across the state of Utah. There are 1,800 agencies over which the state auditor has oversight. And my 2 years in the office under John Dougal, under his tutelage, I've learned a lot in the office, but I still bring with me from outside the office those years of representing a taxpayer and that passion for honest, ethical government. As I've shared many times, I've been in a county who suffered an embezzlement, and that's a motivation for me every day. I've seen the devastation when financial controls aren't there, and I absolutely recognize how important it is that we have the oversight in place and that there is an independence to the state auditor's office.
What can the state auditor do for Utahns to ensure that current and future tax increases are effective and they accomplish intended goals? Ricky?
really the key thing from the statutory role that the auditor provides is transparency. The state auditor's role is to shine a flashlight, or really sometimes a floodlight, on the spending of the entities throughout the state, both at the state as well as the local level. This is crucial because the way government accounting is set up, it almost builds in an element of waste, because you have a budget, and if you don't spend that budget, there's a chance you might lose it the next year. And there are different ways to fix that and to remedy that desire to have a spending spree at the end of the year. And then you call for a tax increase because you've spent all the money. We've done that at Weber County. We've worked very closely to keep those habits, those desires to overspend, to keep those at a bare minimum, but not to punish or hurt, but to really keep it in check. So really the role of the auditor is to conduct objective, independent, financial performance audits to really take a look at how the spending is going and to ask the hard questions, and then to report it and make it available to the citizens so that they can hold their governments accountable.
Excellent. Tina, your response to that?
So thank you for the question. The very first assignment I had in joining the state auditor's office was an in-depth look at the property tax evaluation system in Utah. And you can go out on our website under auditor.utah.gov, and you can find my work on this issue. It affects every Utahn across the state. When the State Tax Commission does not ensure that there is equality and fairness in the property tax valuation, then there is a shift in who actually pays that tax, and it causes an unfairness to the taxpayer. And ultimately, that's who we represent. So it is our job to say the tough thing and to point out when 30 years of state statute has not been followed, and how to make sure that those checks and balances are in place across every agency in the state. So how do we make sure? We point out when the statute is not being followed.
Awesome. Amazing. Ricky, in the past, you've said you're the only auditor in this race. Go ahead and answer what you think puts you ahead on the ballot and why the auditor position is specifically best for you. Why are you the best auditor on this ballot?
Well, first we have to talk about certifications. There is no certification for an auditor in generic, and so anyone can talk about being an auditor, and in fact, anyone can be an auditor. The question is, how much experience do you have? Do you bring the expertise? Do you bring the decades of expertise? And that's what I bring. So I'm a certified public accountant, meaning I've passed the rigorous exam, I've completed the ethics, I complete continuing education and certain experiential requirements. That provides me with the certified public accountant title. Not an easy thing, and comes with it. What comes with it is a whole host of ethical requirements, as well as a lot of trust engendered by the public. As an auditor, though, you have to look at things a different way. And that's not something you can learn in a year or even 5 years. Really, you need 10 years or more as an auditor to really be able to see not just the red flags, but the pink handkerchiefs. You want to be able to see the nuances, and only decades of experience provides that level of skill where you're eating it and living it and sleeping it and dreaming in terms of auditing. And that's, I think, a crucial difference. You want somebody in the office who has decades of experience conducting audits of various types, not just financial audits, but also IT audits, performance, fraud audits, and compliance audits. That's an important set of skills that you would want to bring, whether you're hiring an auditor or whether you're hiring somebody who's going to be the boss of other auditors.
Amazing. Tina, what's your response to that?
I would say that I'm absolutely sure that my opponent has not been operating as a CPA in the state of Utah prior to January 30th of 2024, because that would be against that ethics code. He has not been licensed in the state of Utah as a CPA until January 30th of 2024. But he has endorsed John Dougal, the current state auditor, for 3 terms, who does not have a CPA certification or an accounting degree. And John has been one of the most impactful state auditors in state history because he brought a passion for representing taxpayers and a desire to bring more transparency to the process. And I'm proud to have his endorsement in this race. And I'm proud to have served under him in the office for nearly 2 years now as we've worked for taxpayers. But I think the most important quality in the state auditor is a remembering of who you represent, that the taxpayer is ultimately who we answer to and who we represent, that we have an independent responsibility to remember them in everything that we do, and that we are bringing more light and more transparency for their benefit for Utah.
Okay. Next question. For the both of you, would you support legislation to ensure transparency and accountability within homeless shelters that are owned by private and public interests? Or let me rephrase that. Would you support legislation to ensure transparency when we talk about these homeless shelters, who owns them, and how they operate?
So I just need a clarification. Is there state funding going into those homeless shelters, or are they independently owned?
These would be state funded.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm always answering first, is that right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. But if there are taxpayer dollars being spent, we absolutely should support the transparency. In my mind, it's a no-brainer. We have to watch all of the dollars, and regardless of the source of the dollars, regardless of whether it's at a federal or a local or a state level, the source of those dollars, if it's taxpayer dollars, the transparency should come with it.
Okay. Tina?
Of course, anytime taxpayer funding is involved, there is transparency in the process. And we have direct oversight and subpoena power over every financial transaction in the state of Utah, in the state auditor's office. And that's why Transparent Utah exists, so that there is an open and transparent process over how tax dollars are spent and the intent behind those tax dollars. So of course, there should be any taxpayer dollar, if it goes into a homeless shelter or if it goes into a food pantry, wherever it goes, there needs to be the proper oversight over that money to ensure that it is used carefully, wisely, and judiciously.
Amazing. Good answers. This next question was sent to us by Alex in Salt Lake City. Alex asks, as the state auditor, will you undertake a comprehensive public audit of the use of stadium construction spending as an early priority? Ricky, we'll start with you.
Absolutely. There's been an increase of entities created by the state legislature that are not subject to all of the procurement laws, which I don't fully understand why that is. I have my thoughts about it, but I don't think it's a good idea. I think if you're receiving taxpayer-funded support, you need to adhere to the same laws and requirements that other entities that receive taxpayer funds have to adhere to. And so I think, and also with such a large volume of dollars going through these entities in a relatively short amount of time, we definitely need to take a look at it. We need to take a look at why they're exempt from many of these procurement laws, and keep oversight on them.
Tina?
Absolutely. Anytime you have taxpayer money spent, you need to have proper oversight. And we had this problem once before with Inland Port, and we've had to audit multiple times, and they've had to restructure multiple times. Anytime a state agency is exempted from state procurement code, we're going to have a problem. There's too many opportunities for money to be shifted off in a favorable manner towards without a fair bid process on how that money is spent. So we need to make sure that we're following up. I would have preferred that the legislature put those guardrails in place at the time of the creation of the entity, and they still have time to do that in the off season, and then again during the legislative session before things get started. And I would strongly encourage them to do that. That they should know by this time that we will have oversight over this, and we will be digging deep. So the guardrails should go on at the beginning.
Okay. This next question comes from Becky in Mill Creek. How have you handled finding errors in other colleagues' audits? Ricky?
Errors in other colleagues' audits. I have helped perform, I'm not going to talk about financial audits right now, I'm going to talk about election audits.
Okay.
I have conducted, for the past 13 years, in addition to being the county auditor, I'm also the county clerk. For the past 13 years, I have conducted pre-election audits middle of the election audits and post-election audits, and have worked with other clerks throughout the state to provide that oversight. In the accounting world, it's called a peer review, where you come and you observe the audits of others. I did that quite a bit in the private industry, where you go in and you verify that the audits that were performed according to the auditing standards. It's called GAS, Generally Accepted Auditing Standards. In the government speak, it's the yellow book. And you have to go in and observe, and you just make sure that they are adhering to that. I did that in the private industry, on the financial side of the audits, as well as in government on the non-financial side.
Okay. Tina?
So we do a rigorous team building experience in the state auditor's office, and we usually review together on any audit before it goes out. There's usually a review from multiple levels over how the wording goes. And then as you meet with an agency and they give you feedback on what you found, there's usually a teamwork process that goes into anything before it goes out of our office. And there's multiple sets of eyes that are on it. Also in peer reviews we do this across the country with state auditors' offices across the country, and there's peer review and oversight. There's usually a very collaborative process in any organization that's doing this really well and living to the standards.
Okay. This next question is from Jacob in Orem. What actions would you take if you suspected fraud during a state audit? Ricky?
You have to follow the procedure. First off, you have to stay within the lines that the legislature and the law have established. I'm not going to go out and bend the law, even if it seems in my mind that the fraud is exhaustive or egregious. I still have to stay within those bounds. At that point, in my mind, the first thing you have to do is you have to verify, test, ask, search, probe, anything you can do to get a full picture. And that often means, if at all possible, you talk to the person that you think is the offending party. That's where relationships come in, is they need to know that when you're there, it is not a personal attack. What we're there as an auditor to do is to do basically a financial MRI. We're going in to examine. And whether you're my best buddy or whether you're my worst enemy, you're going to get the same professional treatment that you would expect from a CPA and from a professional auditor. And so when I go in there and I ask those questions, once you get a good understanding of it, then you come up with your audit plan, and that determines what types of testing you do to help corroborate or disprove the information that was given to you by the individual and by the observance that you've done to get an understanding of the situation. So it's really objectivity, stay within the law, communicate, and then dive.
Okay.
So I just want to clarify, this was over a fraud, when you've discovered fraud?
Yeah, and I'll repeat the question again. This is from Jacob in Orem. What actions would you take if you suspected fraud during a state audit?
Okay, anytime that we suspect fraud, there's an additional step that goes into this process. We have to be very, very careful on the investigation. Typically, by the end of the process, you're doing an interview with the person, and we always give them an opportunity to come clean on those situations. And usually that's the best time to, people want to be able to get that off their chest a lot of times in those interviews. But when fraud happens, there is a special step that we take at the end. Once we've documented very, very carefully what the problem is and the amount of money that we're talking about, any charges that reach a criminal level, whether that's a misdemeanor or if it's a felony level, but then we turn it over to the AG, and those actual charges are determined by the AG. While we have subpoena power and investigative authority in the state auditor's office, actual charges that would be brought are turned over to the Attorney General to make those decisions.
Okay. This next question is from Mike in Midvale. What steps would you take if faced with the request to ignore a major issue in a state audit? Ricky?
That's a good question. I'll answer from my experience of what I did in a major audit or a major issue in a county audit. And this was just a few years ago. I had a friend of mine who was serving as an elected official. We were friends. We were both elected. We got along well. He had contributed to my campaign. I helped him on his. And we found that he had skirted procurement rules. on a pretty large project. I came to him. I said, we have this finding. I need to expand this audit. We need to dig deeper. He asked me not to do that. And I said, I'm sorry, I have to represent the people. That's my job, and I did that. We found some additional findings, and in fact, a criminal investigation was opened. My objectivity and independence can't be bought. Even though he was a good friend of mine, we have to be true to the Constitution, and I have to perform my duties that I took an oath to perform. So that's what I do. I'm not going to put aside I'm not going to turn a blind eye, and I'm not going to go extra hard if I dislike them. I turned a friend into the FBI because they tried to vote twice. We caught it. We turned it into the FBI, and they received an unannounced visit at their door. So I will not turn a blind eye if there's a large issue or even a small one.
Okay. Tina?
From my personal experience, this is why I took the stand that I did over not accepting or requesting endorsements or donations from anyone we had the responsibility to audit. Because in the process of an oversight and an audit into our county, there were the accusations that there was favoritism being played because of donations. So I said from the beginning, we will stay clean on all of this so that there is assurance that the independence of the state auditor will always be there, that we will not play favorites in any of these situations. But when you're asked, and we have been asked in the state auditor's office to leave out findings or to change the finding to say they need additional resources or something in that audit, we're very clear that is not our position. Our position is to be an independent arbitrator of what actually is happening, the recommendations for how to fix it. But we are a clear, independent from every other voice in the room. Our job is to represent the taxpayer and the taxpayer's interest, and we are very clear. Sometimes that means you say the hard thing, and you don't necessarily make friends. So relationships are important, but the most important thing is to keep your integrity. And I learned early on in my political career that I wasn't there to make friends with my fellow elected officials. I was there to represent people, and I needed to keep their interests and their money foremost in my mind over what oversight and what needed to be said.
Okay. Amazing answers. At this time, what we're going to do is we're going to flip the process in answering these questions. So we'll start with Tina, then we'll go with Ricky with these next questions. Okay? This question comes from Sep in South Salt Lake. How will you defend public interest versus private sector bids using taxpayer dollars?
Me
Tina?
first? So it was my first time to go first? All right. So this has come up a lot as I've come along the campaign trail. And I actually think this is a new line for Transparent Utah. This is going to be a new app on Transparent Utah under my oversight as a state auditor, that we need to start reporting back to the public where those private public partnerships are. I had the opportunity this last legislative session to sit and listen to the pitch for private entities to come forward for taxpayer money. Anytime that happens, there needs to be oversight over where that money is being spent. And we do that in the state auditor's office, but we don't necessarily list it the same way on our website. But there should be a different line for public-private partnerships, what the intentions of the use of the money are, and then the expenditures for that agency, so that you can find it under a different section and start talking about, is this a really great use of taxpayer money? Because anytime you're using an outside agency, there are different standards and different oversights that come into play.
Okay. Ricky?
Going back to the earlier question about transparency for entities that are providing services with partial taxpayer funding, it's the same principle. Public-private partnerships can be a fantastic tool. They can also be a big nightmare. And so, as with any time that you're using public dollars, whether it's accompanied by private dollars or not, you have to increase your scrutiny. You have to make sure that these agreements, which quite often are complex, quite often have pay-for-performance type scenarios in them. And as you delve in and understand the agreement and you understand the situation, then you're better able to audit. But we have to look at them closely because, again, if they're exempting themselves from particular requirements that a regular governmental entity committee has to adhere to, then we have to look even closer.
Okay. These are our final 2 questions. We appreciate the time you guys have given us. Let's proceed with these last 2 questions. This is from Sam in Orem. Ricky, Tina, if you were the state auditor overlooking the Olympics, what are some things you would be looking for to keep the process as smooth as possible? We'll start with Tina.
As smooth as possible in the Olympics. So there's been a commitment that there will not be taxpayer funding used for the Olympics. So that would restrict the state auditor's oversight over the Olympics. I think we all enjoyed the Olympics in 2002. But when taxpayer funds are used, of course, you want there to be as smooth as process as possible for the Olympics, but you still have to have the statutory oversight of taxpayer dollars. So anytime that that's used, there is a standard audit procedure that goes into place. Everyone goes through that audit. We don't want to add an onerous burden over additional oversight during a process, especially if it's not taxpayer funding, because we would not have oversight there. But of course, we're going to go through the regular process of oversight, of how it's used. Is it being used the way it was appropriated? Is it being used just for that? And is it staying within its statutory bounds of how the money is used?
Ricky.
I moved back to Utah like 3 months after the 2002 Olympics, which was a total bummer. I'm excited for the concept or for the idea of them coming. And my opponent's right. If they're not spending taxpayer dollars, the state auditor's authority is limited. However, those entities will be, and those events will be held at public venues, and there will be public use. And so this is where relationships come in and where it's crucial. I would work very closely up front with the committee and those particularly charged with the bookkeeping and develop a relationship where we can provide what I call continuous auditing. It's like a monitoring service, a monitoring relationship where you can go in and set up key checks and key metrics and identify aberrations before they become big problems. This is a really effective way to audit, especially if it's behind the scenes, so no one is aware. It's not taking anybody's additional time, but it's providing eyes on this service. And good relationships will allow for that to happen because they can trust that it's not for political purposes. It's not a political weapon. It's just an audit.
Awesome. Time's up on that. Great answers. So for our last question, what we would like to do here, if you can take a look into those cameras there, and I want you to make sure when you're looking in the camera, you're giving the viewers the opportunity to vote for you, the opportunity to make their last decision. The primary is almost here. For our last question, the current auditor prides himself on being very frugal with his audits. How would you label your style of auditing, and how does it separate you from candidates in the past? We'll start with Tina.
All right. Thank you for the reference to my boss, John Dougal. I'm proud to have earned his endorsement in this race. And in fact, as he describes me as that I have proven myself to have the ethics, perseverance, and initiative, and the intellectual creativity necessary to do this job. But John and I are very different people, and our styles are a little different. I'm hoping to be Making Accountants Great Again candidate for the State Auditor's Office and bring back that integrity, that passion for a watchdog for the taxpayer, and make that an accountant's role again, instead of having it from the engineering field. I'm married to an engineer. I take nothing away from John Dougal on the engineering side, but I want to bring accounting back to the State Auditor's Office and that oversight, and to make sure more than anything that we continue to be that watchdog that John has set up for the office.
Amazing. Ricky?
Well, thanks again. Really appreciate it. As far as frugality, I drive a 22-year-old Toyota Camry. It runs great because I take care of it. I give it the attention that it needs. I do the same thing with audits. We don't have to work ourselves to death. We make smart hiring decisions, good in depth. We hire good people and we treat them well. And then we make use of technology to make sure that these audits are as efficient as we possibly can. I have been passionate about continuous improvement, lean systems thinking, and other programs that help identify. You go back and look at how your audit was done and where you could have improved. And I've worked over the years to continually improve in that area. That's something that I would do as state auditor, because we all can improve. We all can do better. And it's not just us looking at it. I talk with my clients. I talk with other elected officials. I talk with the staff to do a true hot wash to make sure that we've uncovered every stone so that we can do it better. Because you can do efficient audits, you can do effective audits. Far better to do both at the same time. That's called good taxpayer spending, and I'd appreciate your vote.
This is Face Off with Red Alert, Tina Cannon, Ricky Hatch. Thank you for your time. Utah appreciates the effort, and we will see you at the primary. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, thanks for your time. It was fun.
Good job.
Really appreciate it, Joy.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yep.